Before this video starts, I want to say join my Discord. Okay, love you, bye, thank you.
Oh, the lag. Why? Always as soon as I'm about to go for a play. Did I crash? This is a long lag spike. Am I crashed? Hello? I'm in the Aether. Okay.
In Forsaken, there are characters, and one of those characters is Guest. Guest, full name Guest1337, is a sentinel, and often regarded as the worst one among the community. Form your own opinions on that, but I gotta say, he definitely plays a lot differently than the others. While every other sentinel has to press a single button to get their stun ability, Guest isn't quite that simple. To understand what makes him so fundamentally different, we first need to talk about his abilities. Guest has 3 active abilities and 1.5 passive abilities. We'll come back to it. Starting with Guest's active abilities, we have Block. Block is a relatively simple ability on the surface, but it actually has quite a bit more depth than you might think. Upon use, Guest will brace for impact, slowing down drastically as he does. Once he's braced, he'll be able to, well, block a hit from the killer. Little on the nose, I know. Upon successfully blocking a hit, Guest's sluggish state is immediately flipped on its head, and he gains speed 1 as well as a punch charge. What's a punch charge? We're getting to it. Hold your horses, okay? Should you miss your block, you remain in his slow state for 2 seconds, making you extremely vulnerable to damage. Some interesting things to note about this ability is it doesn't actually make you invincible, although it did in the past. It just gives you resistance 5, meaning you actually can take significant damage while blocking things if you get hit by a heavy hitting move like Mass Infection from 1x. Other fun facts about block includes that Guest's hitbox actually expands while you're bracing, making blocking significantly more generous than your normal hitbox would be. Also, the killer's speed is reduced by 30 upon successfully hitting your block. Moving on to charge. Guest will dash in a shoulder rush animation for 1.5 seconds. The effects will vary based on what you come into contact with. If you hit the killer, you'll do 20 damage while launching them into whatever direction they were hit in, as well as giving them helpless for 1.25 seconds, while Guest himself will gain resistance for 1.25 seconds. If you hit a wall, fall from a great height, or hit nothing at all, Guest will stop dead in his tracks and will gain slowness 2 for a number of seconds. It's kind of complex to explain how it's determined. The game will take however many studs you are from the killer when you stop, multiply it by 3, then divide it by 13. For example, if you stop 10 studs away from the killer, you'd gain slowness for 2.3 seconds, because 10 times 3 equals 30, 30 divided by 13 equals 2.3. The slowness caps off at 15 seconds, so if you have terrible aim, at least you have the comfort of knowing you'll only be slow for a quarter of a minute instead of the rest of the match. A few side notes about this ability is that Guest cannot gain stamina while in his charging state, making it an ineffective means of running away. Charge also cannot be stacked, as the killer will be immune to its effects for 10 seconds after charge is landed. Moving on to Guest's final ability, we have Punch. This is where our aforementioned punch charges come in. Also yes, Guest really likes charges. Charge abilities, punch charges. Somebody get this guy a lawyer. He's got charges left and right. Please laugh. Using the charges that Guest gets from a successful block, Guest can use them to... Now, there's 2 types of punches, regular punches and parries. Parries occur when you use a charge within 1 second of a successful block. Regular punches occur when you use a charge literally any other time. There are a few notable differences about these 2 distinct punches. Parries stun for 3.5 seconds, while regular ones only stun for 2. Regular punches deal 20 damage, while parries deal 35. Parries have a slightly faster windup of 0.625 seconds, while regular punches take 0.8 seconds. During a regular punch, Guest will receive resistance 2, but during a parry, Guest will receive resistance 3. That pretty much covers Guest's regular abilities, but we still have that one weird and a half passive ability to talk about. Guest has 1 passive ability technically, but it barely counts as an ability to begin with. His passive, Made to Last, gives him 15 extra health. And that's it. This does give him the highest base health in the game, only being able to be outdone by chance if he gets a lucky reroll, but the problem with this is every character has their own health pool anyway. Characters like Elliot have a base of 80 HP. Does this mean Elliot has a passive stating he has negative 20 HP? No. Then why are we acting like Guest having a slightly higher base health is some kind of innovation? What I would classify as an ability, and a pretty damn good one at that, is Guest's hidden property. Guest inherently has a higher hit priority than anyone else in the entire game. What's hit priority? Well, hit priority is basically the order in which attacks hit things. For example, Builderman's buildings have less hit priority than a survivor, so if a building and a survivor are stacked, the survivor will always get hit instead of the building. This also applies to Guest, who has a higher hit priority than any other survivor, meaning if him and another survivor are stacked, Guest will always be hit first, no matter what. This may sound like a bad thing, but it's actually not. Considering your strongest ability requires that you get hit to prime it, along with having a higher base health than any other survivor in the game, this makes you quite the bodyguard. You can tank hits via block or just throwing yourself in front of other survivors, taking the damage yourself and keeping your supporting survivors healthy, which is a big deal considering most supports have a lot less health than a more typical survivor like Shadletsky or Noob. This feels like way more of a passive than, oh, he just has more health, cut that out. But ultimately, nobody cares what I think. Everyone just wants to hear about the gameplay of Guest. As I said before, due to Guest's higher base health and higher hit priority, he's a bit of a tank, made to protect his team and take the brunt of the damage for them. So what can Guest do in his general gameplay? Well, he can shield his team, he can charge at his opponents, he can stun people. Wait. Is Guest just Reinhardt from Overwatch? Given Guest's versatile moveset, there's actually several effective ways to play him. The first is something I call shadowing. The idea is pretty simple. All you do is follow your team around, sort of like you're their shadow, hence the name. The trick is to stay within a close distance of your team, close enough that you can act should anyone get into trouble, but not too close as to make it obvious as to what you're doing. A good example of shadowing would be this clip here. This cool kid is chasing a fellow Guest who's literally on 8 HP whilst on fire. Instead of running in, I'm keeping a healthy distance away from them, but I see Guest about to go down this ramp, and now that he's directly behind him, I know that Cool Kid is probably going to try to hit him. So I quickly put myself between Guest and Cool Kid right as he swings, landing a successful block parry combo, saving Guest's life while giving Cool Kid a brand new dent in his head. A bad example of shadowing is what I do here. This Shadletsky is backed into a corner, and instead of keeping distance or going around the corner to hide myself, I kind of just saunter on in and end up missing my block horrifically, ultimately only serving to lower my own health. The next way of playing Guest is a bit of a heads or tails kind of deal. Something that I like to call POR, which stands for proactive or reactive. When playing Guest, you have to be very aware of what's going on. How killers work, how maps function, how other players think. For example, a lot of killers won't swing at you because they know how Guest operates. They know that if they swing wildly, they're probably going to end up picking their teeth up off the floor after Guest gives them the big Raga treatment.
Free Gojo, nigga. So bitches, big maho. What the fuck?
However, I've noticed that these same killers, for some odd reason, feel very comfortable swinging at you as you go around corners. I don't know if it's because they think people aren't paying attention as much when they go around a corner, or if they're just trying to break up the monotony of chasing someone for half the match while not swinging, but for some reason, killers just love to swing going around corners. This is an example of the proactive part of Guest's gameplay style. You see that the killer isn't swinging at you in a given situation, so instead of trying to block and just praying it works, you can create a new situation that may have more favorable odds, such as running in a straight line to turning a corner. So if that's proactive, what about reactive? Playing reactively is essentially following the wisdom of the great Burt Gummer from the Tremors series.
Doing what I can with what I got.
While Burt Gummer totes around giant-ass guns, Guest totes around giant-ass guns. I can't really think of a good segue out of this joke. I just really wanted an excuse to talk about my favorite movie series, Tremors, and make a joke about how all Guest fan art has him ripped as hell. Anyways, moving on. Playing reactively really just comes down to reading a situation and reacting. Let's look at a few examples. In this clip, I'm being chased around by a Noli. He throws and manages to hit me with the Nova, pulling me backwards into him. Based on my knowledge of Noli as a killer, I know the chances of him swinging here is basically 100%. Considering the Nova M1 combo is Noli's bread and butter. I react to the situation by blocking, nullifying his hit, and permanently imprinting the bottom of my combat boots on Noli's right cheek. Let's look at another example. In this clip, my fellow guest misses his charge, so I admittedly kinda just waste my own charge trying to give him some distance. 1x runs right past me and straight to this Jake guest, who gets his block predicted. So I quickly react to the missed block by stepping in front of Jake and using my own block, parrying the killer. Really important detail about this clip. Notice how I specifically mentioned stepping in front of the other guest. This is important and only applies to guest himself. Remember what I said earlier when I was talking about hit priority? With any other character, I could have been behind them and still gotten the parry because guest has a higher hit priority. But because it was another guest, he would have gotten hit instead of my block had I not walked in front of him. It's small little details like this that really split the difference from a good guest player to a great guest player. The third and final way to play guest, and my personal favorite, is probably the hardest way to play in the entire game in my opinion. It's something called sandbagging. This is a term you may be familiar with if you play fighting games or other asymmetrical horror games like Dead by Daylight. What this means is intentionally playing poorly at the start of the game to draw attention to yourself before going on to keep the killer busy for a large amount of time or the rest of the game. At the start of this game, I let this Diva 1X hit me down to half health to get her interested, before going on to keep them off of me for the rest of the game while my entire team kinda just gets to sit back and watch. I can't recommend playing this way because it probably won't go well, but when it does, it's extremely fun and satisfying. So if you think you're good enough, maybe give it a try sometime. Okay, this script is already as long as the entire 2-time videos was, and we still have to talk about all guests' tech, so I'm gonna speedrun this. First up is the shove tech. This tech isn't really mechanically demanding and more so just requires some careful timing and positioning. Shove tech is just using your charge to knock the killer into suboptimal spots. Off ledges, into map hazards, into taff mines, really anything that's bad for the killer will work. If the killer's near a ledge, charge him. If the killer's near slowness water, charge him. If the killer's... okay, yeah, I think you get it. You charge him. Next up, block baiting. Block baiting is just making it appear like you're preoccupied with something else, waiting for the killer to come after you, and then blocking. This can be done doing a generator, drinking a Bloxy Cola, healing at a dispenser, anything really. Just look vulnerable, then parry. That's pretty much it. A bit of a sneaky and arguably kinda scummy tech is emote blocking. This is where you use an emote in order to make it appear like you're blocking when you're not. I recommend turning your body away from the killer to make it harder to tell that you're not actually blocking. If you want to do this, I recommend Housefly for every skin in the game except for Milestone 3 and 4, in which you should use Virtual Insanity. But realistically, if you already have Milestone 4, you probably aren't watching this video anyway, so... Another tech we have is drag blocking. Now, regular viewers of my channel are about to have a heart attack because for this tech, I actually encourage you enable visible hitboxes. If you know, you know. The setup for this tech is really simple. All you have to do is run just in front of the killer, but still slightly out of range. Once you see them swing and their big red hitbox pop up, all you have to do is stop moving and block. This will cause their hitbox to drag into you and give you a free block or parry. This one takes some getting used to though, so don't be surprised if you struggle with it on your first few tries. For our final tech, we have double punching. Probably the most interesting and most useful out of these techs. Double punching is the action of blocking and punching at the same time, basically giving you the ability to farm infinite punches if you do it right. All you have to do is press Q and E at the same time and bam, you've punched the killer and restored your charge while taking little to no damage. As you can see in these clips, I'm both getting a stun and returning my block charge at the same time. Practice this. It's incredibly good. Here's some extra tips for guests to improve your gameplay and knowledge of his playstyle. First, and one of the most important, is mass infection is going to be your best friend. While you can't get charges from blocking the projectile itself, it does have a close range hitbox that can be used to get a charge. And it's quite a generous hitbox at that. With this, you can become a living nightmare for 1x. Abuse this. Tip for his gameplay is Guest thrives on misdirection. For example, in this clip, I keep juking this killer but never actually try to block them. Keep this up for a while before eventually running out of stamina. Instead of trying to juke them out like I have been for the last minute, I subvert their expectations and do go for a block. Them not suspecting anything, they hit it and get punished for it. This is basically the Forsaken equivalent of that never let them know your next move meme. For our final tip, it's really less of a tip and more of a fun fact. Guest is an absolutely buggy mess and loves to fling the killer, himself, or even his teammates. Don't believe me? Watch this. There's not really a way to use this consistently, but it sure is funny. That's it for this guide. I made sure to do my homework this time, because unlike the John Doe video, where you guys absolutely shredded me in the comments for missing some stuff, I really wanted to make sure I had every tech possible. And for those of you gonna comment, well, what about the wall run? It got patched, so we aren't talking about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make, but I never want to play Guest again after this. He can be really painful sometimes. With all that being said, I'm gonna go take a nap.